Most video editors are making a huge mistake that's keeping their work forgettable and keeping it bland. They spend hours and hours trying to work on perfecting animations, color grades, and cool effects, but the edits still just don't hit. See, editing's not about making things look cool. The best editors aren't just cutting footage, they're crafting an emotional journey that forces people to watch until the end. If you don't get this right, no amount of fancy editing or animations or plugins, none of that's going to be able to save your edits. Now, by the end of this video, you'll have a storytelling framework that Hollywood editors, viral YouTubers, even top tier content creators in general all use to hook viewers and keep them engaged. But before I show you how it works, let me tell you a quick story. Now, a few years ago, there was a YouTube editor named Daniel, and he was struggling, really struggling. He was technically good at editing. He crushed animations, he was great at the technical things, but his edits weren't making an impact. His clients weren't happy. He was churning through clients, and the videos that he worked on weren't getting any views, and he could not figure out why. Then one day, he came across a secret technique used by literally the top 1% of editors, and when he applied it, everything changed for him. His edits became literally addictive to watch. His clients were absolutely blown away, and suddenly, he was getting booked out for months in advance. Now, what did he discover? He discovered the power of emotional storytelling in editing. Who was that? Well, it wasn't Daniel. It was me. And today, in this very long masterclass, I'm going to break it down for you step by step, everything you need to know about storytelling for video editors. So get prepared to be here for a minimum of 1 hour plus. Get a cup of coffee, a notepad, and get ready to lock in. By the way, this masterclass you're about to watch is straight from my program, where I have many in-depth masterclasses teaching you everything you need to know about being a top 1% editor, but also how to make it a full-time career. I have just a 3-hour-long masterclass alone where I talk you through in depth how to land your first client. And I get messages like this from students clearly showing that this is good. Now, this program just launched, so I have it set at a stupid discount to make sure that I can get as many of you editors and help as many of you editors who want to scale as possible. But don't worry about that right now. First, I just want you to watch this. I want you to learn. I want you to take away this value in this video. And at the end, if you feel like, you want to check out the program, go ahead and check it out. But until then, guys, lock in, and I hope you enjoy. Storytelling as an editor masterclass. Whether you're somebody who wants to just grow a YouTube channel and you can't yet afford to hire your own editor, or whether you're a video editor who wants to become a better editor and grow a business, gain a good income as a professional video editor, this video will be probably one of the most beneficial videos you've ever watched. I have sat down with a YouTuber and creator, Tyler Mowry, one of my good friends and old clients. He has 300,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I basically picked his mind. And then I basically took everything that I've learned and from his mind, and I put it into this video. This will be absolutely mind-bending for you. So now that the anticipation has been built, let's get into this storytelling as an editor masterclass, which, by the way, this video is specifically going to be geared towards storytelling when it comes to video editing, okay? Now, who is this masterclass for? This specific video. Well, the goal is to teach editors and aspiring YouTubers, both of those groups of people, who want to just make better videos for themselves or for clients, and teaching you how to think, not like an editor who just cuts clips together, but how to think like storytellers, structuring your edits for maximum emotional impact and engagement rather than just cutting clips together. Okay, I'm just going to put this over here. That is what we're going to be going over. Now, this is also who this is for, right? This is also for aspiring YouTubers and editors who want to go beyond just the basic cutting of cutting out mistakes, and who want to learn how to shape compelling stories, okay? Now, who is this masterclass not for? Well, before you spend the next hour or two or however long this is going to be, this is not a tutorial on softwares. So this is not a tutorial on how to use editing softwares. We have those already in this group or in this program. This isn't a tutorial on how to use certain functions or even the little things when it comes to YouTube or your YouTube channel, okay? What this is is about the principles that make a video emotionally and narratively effective. Okay, this will literally fundamentally change the way that you create content. So let's first cover why storytelling even matters. Okay, why does storytelling even matter in the first place? Well, first of all, the first thing we need to understand is that people, they remember stories. They don't remember clips, okay? They remember stories, not clips. So don't focus so much on clips unless it's to help tell a better story, okay? The next reason why storytelling matters so much is storytelling, it keeps viewers engaged. That keyword being engaged from the start to the finish of the video, which is hard to do, okay? Great storytelling, it creates emotion, and emotion is what makes content memorable. It's what makes it sticky, right? Sticky is the key word there. It'll stick in their minds. It'll make them want to share it. Okay, now let me just erase this so it doesn't bother you, okay? That is why storytelling matters. But now you might wonder, well, what's the edit's role in storytelling? Right? How does editing come into this topic of storytelling? Well, not just cutting bad parts out, but cutting to enhance narrative flow. See, what you first need to understand when it comes to storytelling is a lot of the storytelling actually happens in the edit, okay? A lot of the storytelling happens in the editing room or in the actual edit. Despite what most people might think, of course, the storytelling, it begins really in the script. If you guys have the luxury of being able to be a part of the scripting, if it's your own content, of course you do. Of course, a lot of it happens here, right? But more times than not, especially even in YouTube, most of the storytelling ends up happening in the edit. Okay. And when we edit for storytelling, what we want to do is not just cut out bad parts, not just mistakes, right? I've covered this in other lessons. AI can do that for us. What we want to do is cut to enhance the narrative flow, which we will explain in a bit. We'll explain what that means. But we want to basically cut with the focus in mind to enhance the flow of the video, not just focusing on cutting out bad parts, okay? That is not what we want to focus on. Next is the edit's role in storytelling is helping structure the pacing and flow of the story. This is so important, right? Even if we have a script and the script has good storytelling, right? The script has good storytelling. What it might not have is it might not have good pacing. It might not have good pacing, okay? This completely, the way the pacing and flow plays out of an edit is, again, dependent on the editor inside of the edit. Next, the editor's role in storytelling when it comes to content, video content, is to use emotion, timing, and rhythm to guide the viewer. So really, if we break this down just a little bit more, what we can do is we can use timing and we can use rhythm to help actually guide the emotion of the story. You see, when you break it down like this, you realize how powerful the editing process is inside of a story. Okay, so that was just us covering why storytelling actually matters. But now let's go into what we're going to talk about today. And today what we're going to do is we're going to dive into 7 main pillars of fundamentally understanding storytelling. And we're going to go through each one of these pillars, what they are, and go in depth on how to do it and how to implement it together. Okay, so with that being said, let's get straight into it. Let's get to part 1, which is the core elements of storytelling. So when we break this down, storytelling has a few core elements. Okay. Every single story, it really has 3 things. And please take what I'm saying right here, take this with a grain of salt, because as this is not always the case. But I'm just fundamentally speaking here. Every story has really 3 things, okay? Now, what are those 3 things? Well, first of all, it's a clear beginning, middle, and end, also known as a structure, because a story doesn't always have a clear beginning, middle, and end. I'm speaking in terms of fundamentally here, meaning in most cases, a clear story or a story has a clear beginning, middle, and end. But again, as we will cover in just a few seconds, not all stories have. It's not as simple as a clear beginning, middle, and end. But and to not information overload you, just focus on the fact that every story really has three great things. One of those things are a clear beginning, middle, and end, or really just a clear structure, okay? Next is every great story has emotional highs and lows. And what does emotional highs and lows do? It creates engagement, which is what we want, especially for YouTube content. Every single great story, it also has conflict and resolution, which creates viewer satisfaction, which oftentimes is what actually gets the creator a subscribe. It's conflict and resolution. And we can do this by, in the beginning of a story, opening curiosity loops and then closing them later, which we'll talk about. But essentially, very, 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 very high level stuff here. Let's just talk about this from a high level point of view. If we have a video here, which we will talk about in just a moment, a conflict and resolution, right, to equal satisfaction. A way that we can create conflict and resolution as the editor is trying to find a moment somewhere in the edit where the creator, whether it's you or a client, where they pique curiosity in some way, aka also known as opening a curiosity loop, right? Posing a question of some sort. We can then, as the editor, place that curiosity loop or question in the beginning, and then whenever he answers that question or has a payoff, we can place that towards the end, right? And then what's happening, payoff, what's happening is we now have a conflict and resolution, or we now have curiosity and a payoff. We're opening a curiosity loop here that is only going to be paid off towards the end of the video, which means now they're going to want to watch this whole in-between part of the video to get to that payoff, to get that satisfaction of knowing the answer to this, or the conclusion, or the resolution to this, okay? Now, that is conflict and resolution. In films, in films, it's very similar, but in YouTube, the landscape of YouTube is slightly different. But fundamentally speaking, we need to understand this, okay? Because conflict and resolution, or opening curiosity gaps and closing them, having a setup and payoff, whatever you want to call it, it equates to viewer satisfaction. Now, I want to get into some storytelling frameworks that we can use in editing. This is where we get really into the good stuff here. So there's a few storytelling techniques that we can use and that we always should keep in our mind as a video editor. One, if you're really, sorry, I had to pause the video there and take a sip of water. Sorry. So, excuse me. So, if you were just a basic content, really just focus on a clear beginning, middle, and end. However, if you want to really take things to the next level and optimize your content as much as possible, and especially not only for yourself, but for clients too, this is how I get video editing clients to stick with me, and how I get clients' videos to perform so well, is what I do is I understand storytelling frameworks. Not only do I understand them, but I implement them, okay? For example, we have the hero's journey, which is the first one, right? And almost all great stories follow a transformational arc. That's the arc of the hero's journey. There's several different ways in which this hero's journey can play out. It can play out with this method of storytelling. It can play out with this method of storytelling. And it can play out with this method of storytelling, all of which we will cover right now. However, fundamentally speaking, the main thing that we need to understand is the hero's journey and how we can achieve the hero's journey within any of these other storytelling techniques that we'll go into. Any of these three here, okay? Any of this one, or this one, okay? Overall, we want to have a hero's journey, okay? Because all great stories, for the most part, follow a transformation arc. And when I say hero's journey, what I'm referring to as hero's journey is a transformational arc of some sort, which means a person or a thing in the video goes through a phase of transformation. Now, that being said, what I want to do now is first cover the Pixar formula, which is the first storytelling technique. Now, the Pixar formula, it's a storytelling formula that the company Pixar uses with all of their films. And by the way, they make incredible films most of the times. They use a storytelling principle or formula. And it's the 6-step formula used in some of the best stories that you've seen from Pixar. So what is it? Let's go check it out. The first one we're going to cover is a Pixar's storytelling formula. Okay. I don't want you to see that other one yet. I'm just going to move this over a little bit. Okay. Now, Pixar's storytelling framework is essentially, which by the way, I found this, we can break it down this side of the graph is basically how we can make it a little bit more applicable to YouTube stuff. And then this side of the graph is how they use it in films, okay? Their actual storytelling framework. So this is Pixar's storytelling framework. So first usually it starts with once upon a time, right? Usually that's how Pixar starts their storytelling framework. And then you have and every day, okay? And by the way, this is in very, very close correlation with the next storytelling technique, my personal favorite one that I use. Okay. Then we have until one day, and because of this, until finally, and ever since that day. What does this mean? What in the world does this mean? Well, if we think about it in terms of business or even YouTube, once upon a time, it's your target audience or your target niche, right? Who? So let's use an example. Let's use a video editing channel as an example. My who are editors, okay? Now, and every day is going to be their familiar situation, right? Whatever that is for them. Then until one day. So they're in a familiar situation, right? Day-to-day life, normal day to day, okay? But then a problem arises, right? What's their problem? Most of the time, the problem that editors have is, not making enough money, right, with editing. That's the problem. And because of this, other solutions suck. And because of this. So, and because of this is, all the courses out there suck, as an example. I don't know. Courses suck. Okay. And because of that, your unique product benefits, right? Because of that, let's say I'm making this YouTube video or I'm making this course. I'm making X or coming out with X until finally your unignorable offer, which is as it sounds. So your offer, whether it's to watch the video or whether it's to opt into your course, whatever. And ever since that day, the customer's life is improved, right? So now they win by taking whatever it is you're selling, or not, right? Whether it's watching your video or whether it's opting into your course. This is a really good framework to follow for educational content, right? So once upon a time, we have an editor, and every single day they're in this familiar day-to-day situation until one day they realize they're not making enough money as an editor. And because of this, they realize that all the course, and it's because of this, the reason being other courses suck. And because of that, I decided to make this YouTube video or come out with this course until finally, I finally made it and came out with it. And then ever since that day, editors have won because now they know how to make money. This is maybe a bad example that I just gave you with the editors, but this is the storytelling framework that they follow. This is much more of a educational thing. And by the way, this is just how to make it applicable to more of a business type thing. But you can take this and just make it applicable to storytelling in general. You can make it applicable to your niche as a whole, or you can make it applicable to a video by video basis. Now I'm going to show you what my favorite storytelling technique is and the one that I really use. But before we get into that, I want to first tell you the but therefore rule, okay? Which, by the way, is what I just did to you. The but therefore rule is how to avoid boring predictable sequences. So these are could be rehooks or story loops or whatever you want to call it in the nature of YouTube, not in the nature of films necessarily. But therefore, for example, I say, now I'm going to show you my favorite storytelling framework that has helped me to edit videos that I've gotten paid $5,000 for just one video on. But first, I need to really show you another principle, or I need to show you X, Y, and Z so that you can understand. Therefore, you can begin to understand what my favorite one actually is, right? I'm creating a rehook or opening a new story loop, whatever you want to call it, in order to go to the next point. And that's what the but therefore rule is in terms of YouTube, not in terms of film storytelling, okay? Now, when we talk about, now we're actually going to get into my favorite one, which is the 8 story beat by Dan Harmon and how to keep the story flowing with good structure. This is the one that I always follow. This is the one that I know best, okay? So, this is the Dan Harmon story structure. And it's structured into, it's called the 8-beat story structure. And it starts with you, right? So it's you, establish your protagonist. So establish your main character. And then we go to the second beat of the story, which is something's not right because your character needs something. Then go, which is crossing a threshold to get that thing. But in order to do that, or in the process of doing that, we're on the road of trials. We're on the search, right? We keep getting conflict. Okay, we keep searching and finding conflict on the journey. And that leads us into find, which is meeting, I guess you could, it's written here, meeting like the goddess or meeting the main transformational point, right? This is like the main, rise of your story, or the main transformational beginning, transforming. I'm just going to put B, the beginning of a transformational phase, right? Then here we have the 6th beat is take, or paying the price. So usually in order to get what you wanted, you need to pay a price of some sort. Then you need to return home or bring it home. And you return home after this journey having your 8 story beat changed as a person, right? You're now a master of both worlds, or you've now changed as a person because of this journey. Let me break it down in terms of like a movie that's pretty simple. And let's see how this goes. Because this is kind of just off the cuff. Let's take Batman The Dark Knight, right? The one with Joker, just because it's a cool movie. I hope most of you have seen that. If not, you should watch it. Okay, so what do we have for that movie? Well, the protagonist. Who is the protagonist? It's Batman, right? Batman. Okay. He needs, something's not right. He needs something. What is the need? Well, if you remember, his need is to find someone to take on the mask of Batman, find someone to take his place. So he needed to find someone to take his place who didn't have to wear a mask at night, because that was the whole reason that the enemy in this film was created, because he wanted to unmask Batman, right? So his need was to find someone like Harvey Dent, by the way, in the movie, who could take Batman's place for doing good and fighting crime without masking himself as a vigilante, right? And then he had to cross the threshold, right? If we remember in that movie, what was a threshold cross? Well, the threshold cross was, what was the threshold cross in that movie? Maybe it was, I know this movie, let's see, just need to think for a second. Crossing the threshold. I'm going to pause this just so I could think for a second. This is usually how I go through YouTube videos. By the way, this process sometimes takes me an hour, sometimes more. It's really just about brainstorming and thinking. Okay, so I just had to think. Trying to remember the movie because it's been a while since I watched it. But essentially, just to recap, so we have you establish your protagonist basically in their comfort zone, right? So we have Batman, or we have Bruce Wayne, who's maintaining order in Gotham, right? As Batman, and you know he's just the protagonist. That's who we established, right? Then we have Joker. Joker came out of nowhere and he emerged, and as a new kind of threat. Right? He emerges as a new kind of threat, and then that introduces the chaos and then of trying to unmask Batman, and that's when Bruce Wayne or Batman's like, okay, something's not right. I have a need, which is to find someone who could take my place without being a vigilante. Then the go is where he crosses the threshold, right? And this is where Batman, he leaves his morals behind, right? So he has a no killing rule. No kill is what Batman has, okay? And he leaves Gotham's legal system behind to personally go after the villain. In this case, it was I don't remember his name, but it was the The mob guy who went to Asia or whatever, he took him from Asia and brought him back to Gotham, okay, leaving his jurisdiction. And then he also realized in this moment, I might have to actually begin to kill Joker. Like that might be the only way to do this, right? Just need to take a sip of water. Cool. So number 4, right, is where the Joker, he begins to really escalate his attacks at this point, really going hard on trying to unmask Batman. And, you know, he's forcing Batman into a pretty impossible situation here, into moral dilemmas, killing people to force Batman's hand, threatening Harvey Dent as well, who's like Gotham's White Knight, the guy who Bruce Wayne wants to be the new kind of Batman, not as a vigilante, but within the guidelines of the law. Okay. And during this process, we're hitting roads of trial, right? Because Joker's killing people, forcing Batman's hand. He's threatening Harvey, and he's pushing Gotham into fear. And so we have fear, threat, right? And really murder. like those are the things that we have here. But then we have number 5, which is fine, right? Or really it's getting what they want. That's what number 5 is. It's getting what they want. And what does Batman want? He wants to capture the Joker, and guess what? He gets the Joker, but it's a hollow victory. It's a short-lived victory. Why? Because the Joker got caught on purpose. Why? Because the Joker actually had Harvey Dent and Rachel, which was Batman's love, right? Or it was Bruce Wayne's love of his life. He had them trapped in a warehouse with explosives rigged to blow. And because of that leads us into number 6, right? By the way, this led to tragic consequences we'll get into, but 6, paying the price for it. What was the price he paid for that, for capturing Joker? Well, the price he paid was, first of all, Harvey, he got scarred. And because of that became Two-Face, which was now a villain, which means he's no longer eligible to be in the place that Batman wanted him to be as Gotham's White Knight, okay? The next thing is his love of his life, Rachel. She dies in an explosion. And the next thing is the ideological battle, the philosophical battle between Batman and Joker. Joker wins at this point. Joker's really won. Batman feels like he's nothing. He feels like everything was useless, right? Right now, Batman is in a phase of paying the price. Right? And that leads us to bringing it home, which is 7, the return. Okay? Back to where they started. The thing is, let me just come over here. The thing is here, Batman, he decides to return to Gotham as Batman, right? After the loss. So he goes back to his city. Okay? But here's the problem, is everything's changed at this point. Everything's changed because he realized that he can't win this final fight through traditional means. Like he can't do it the way that Batman normally does it, which, by the way, is a thought process that Batman would have never ever had. But because of this story beat, he's now changed. And because of that, that leads us to 8, right? Where Batman, he takes the blame for Two-Face. He takes the blame for Harvey. Because now he's matured enough to decide, you know what, I'm more than a vigilante, I'm going to take the blame. Okay, so he takes the blame, and then and then after that, he does it to preserve the reputation of Harvey, but also he paints himself as the villain. He defeats Joker, and overall, he's back in his original situation as the vigilante, but he's changed. He's gone through a character arc or character change. Okay. This is an example of how to use the 8 story structure beat for like Batman, or how Batman used it, right? And, you know, maybe there was a few things I was off. As I said, I had to go look on my phone, not on exactly how this was used, because I'd be cheating, but more so on remembering the movie, because I love the movie, but it's been a minute since I've watched it. Anyways, that's how this would play out there. But like, how could we play this out as a YouTube video? Well, we have the protagonist, the main person in a state of comfort, right? This could be the main character, so the creator or the client or yourself, whoever it is. Then it could be that person needs something, right? Maybe it's another person who needs something, right? Maybe if it's for editors, it's editors, they need this information to learn how to make more money, right? But in doing so, we cross a threshold of some sort. In doing so, we need to let go of something in the past. Maybe it's a limiting belief or a mindset shift, right? Mindset shift that they need to let go of in order to move forward. And in doing so, well, now they're hitting a roads of trials because now they're on a search. Okay, well, what is the mindset shift I need, which we're guiding them through in the video. And then the fine is them actually getting what they want, getting the mindset shift, okay? Maybe this could be applicable to like your whole channel as a whole. Mindset shift. But then they realize, wait, that came at a cost. The cost was, well, now I got what I wanted. I have my mindset shifted and now I'm making more money as an editor. But now the problem is I'm paying a price. And the price is I don't have enough time to scale at all. I need to learn how to hire other editors, right? And now we're bringing it home, okay? And having changed or having learned that thing. And then at the very end, having changed, okay? So this is like maybe how we can structure, I don't know, the story of our channel. But like, for example, with me, it's a lot easier because I edit documentary type content. So for me, it's really easy to use this 8 story beat structure in helping craft my edits. And it's not always, sometimes we're going to miss story beats, but if we get, some of them, it already makes the content so much better. I just wanted you guys to understand this, not to necessarily use this for every video because sometimes it's really hard to use, film-based story beats in YouTube, but try to find certain ways we could use it in YouTube to make our content better. The next thing is how to shape stories and edit. So this is why it is so crucial to take the lead within videos as the editor for your own YouTube channel or others you're working for as an editor, because you can choose how well the story plays out despite what you might think, right? It's up to you how that story plays out. How can we do this? Well, the first thing we could do and the way we can implement some of these is first by finding the story arc in raw footage. So go through the raw footage and see if we can find any story arc that we could build. See and look for any places that we could have any of these story beats, right? We have the protagonist, right? Are they in a need? What is them crossing the threshold? What is the search like? What is them getting the thing or finally talking about the point? And what's the price of it, right? All this stuff. Try to find any sort of story arc in raw footage. Maybe, and for most cases in YouTube, guys, let's be real, it's going to be a start, middle, and end. But in between here, we can open and close curiosity loops through how the raw footage plays out as well, okay? The next thing we want to do is take charge and rearrange the clips to create better flow. Softwares like DaVinci Resolve and Premiere Pro have something called text-based editing, so you can actually you can read text and edit the text in order to edit the actual video, which means we can actually search for keywords that we might be looking for that we think, hey, a keyword right here could go better in the beginning of this video to help have this video have a better flow, or to rearrange the clips to have a better flow. And we could use text-based editing to speed that up a lot. Next is cutting out what's not necessary to the story. Kill your darlings, okay? Kill. Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. Too many people leave way too much in because it's their content and they think it's good. A lot of times your content sucks, or at least certain parts of it, and your content would actually be way better had you just taken certain parts out. So cutting out what's not essential to the story is massive. Next, we can do this by keeping the main character's goal in front and center throughout the whole video. Again, this is very video to video basis, but I want to show you an example of an Apple video I worked on, which I covered in the video editing fundamentals lesson. And I worked on it, and I'm gonna show you this example of how I took the lead to create a story out of nothing. The client, if we have the Apple video that I'm about to show you that I edited, the client, I'll even do what you want better instead of doing that. Let's do this. Come here. The client did this. I'm just gonna remove this background, make this better. Boom. Okay, so the client sent me, which, by the way, it was just the video. There was no music, so let's get rid of that. Okay. So the client sent me just a video. the video I'm about to show you. And it was the only thing on that video, it was just footage like this. It was him talking to the camera. That was it. There was no B-roll. There was nothing for me to work with, okay? He sent me talking head A-roll footage, and then it looked like this. It was just a timeline with a script, right? So what I did was I decided to take charge, and I decided to actually look at Dan Harmon's story circle and see which points of that could I implement in this Apple video. And I said, okay, well, we start off with, he says a verbal hook, but what would be even better than that? Well, what's a storytelling principle that we hear often? Show, don't tell. So I said, okay, I'm going to start the video by showing, not telling, and I'm going to start it by building a character arc, or establishing our protagonist, which in this case is not him. He's just the messenger, right? In this case, our creator, he's just the messenger, okay? The real protagonist here, if it's a video about Apple, it's going to be, Apple itself. It's going to be Steve Jobs. It's going to be Tim Cook, right? Those are going to be the protagonists. So what do? I take lead and I cut up the footage and I go and I do research, and then I implement a hook, a visual hook that instead builds our story arc or shows who our protagonist is. And I continue to do these types of things throughout the video. I'm just going to show you the first part to bring this point home. So we're going to go watch that right now. Let's go to YouTube. Let's go to Upton. Videos. Apple.
Ever wondered what makes a film truly unforgettable? Is it the actors, the script, or
Apple is one of the richest companies on the planet.
Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone.
It's hard to imagine life without Apple.
Ross and I started Apple in my parents' garage when I was 20.
Apple?
Apple has a plan.
We're just not making products to sell.
Here it is. But it's paying way less.
See, all I had to work with was this clip and this clip. What did I do? I cut them in half and I built a character arc. I set up our protagonist through understanding storytelling and through doing some research and finding some cool clips, okay?
Apple is one of the richest companies on the planet.
Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone.
It's hard to imagine.
And in this, I'm establishing stakes. It's hard to imagine a life without Apple. We have stakes. Why? Then I go into credibility of what they've done. They've introduced the phone. They reinvented or revolutionized the phone, right? All this stuff. So this, my friends, this is how you can understand the core elements of storytelling, which leads us to part 2, which is the power of emotion. How to take control of this in the edits. Well, first of all, emotion is the glue that keeps people watching. Okay, you need to fundamentally understand emotion is a glue that keeps people watching. The word engagement, it's heavily rooted behind the fundamental process of using psychology to grab hold of someone's stimulus onto something. Meaning, for example, getting somebody's attention on your videos or on your video, even deeper than that, it's about grabbing hold of someone's emotional stimulus or emotionally investing them in the video. That's what engagement is, right? It's not just attention. It's using psychology and emotion to grab hold of their stimulus, their attention. So if we want people to watch our videos for longer, we need to hit on people's emotions. And how do we do that? How do we hit on people's emotions? We do it through storytelling, because storytelling is fundamentally what evokes, the easiest way to evoke an emotion. And if we can storytell by taking someone's pain points and introduce those into storytelling, we have the equation for successfully evoking engagement. Okay, so how to control emotion in the actual edit? Well, first of all, we can do that by shot selection. So choosing moments that reinforce our emotions. You saw that I just did that in the Apple video. What did I do? I strategically researched and found shots that would help build my protagonist of the story, which was Apple. And I did it by when I wanted to give it I wanted to first introduce how it was invented. So I introduced Steve Jobs. Then I wanted to give it credibility. So I gave it credibility by introducing the keynote of the announcement of introducing the iPhone. Okay. And then what did I do? I introduced Tim Cook and I added some stakes. Tim Cook is the current CEO, and I added stakes by finding a clip of him saying, life without Apple, I couldn't imagine that, right? Why? And then I went and showed credibility again by having a bunch of famous newscasting sites talking about Apple. And I only cut out the word Apple, so it sounded like it went Apple, 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 right? As you just saw. That is how you can use shot selection, choosing your moments to reinforce emotion and tell a better story. Next is through pacing and rhythm. Again, you saw that. First, I had fast cuts for energy. Why? Because let's say that person doesn't know what Apple is. I want to start it with a super fast paced cutting of images and then get into it, right? And then my cuts slow down for impact. That's exactly what I did, guys. I did what I'm telling you right now. What did I do as well? I used music and sound effects, how different scores create different emotional tones. I had risers and hits throughout that and other sound effects to help tell my story and help add emotions. I had risers to help evoke a sense of like curiosity. What's going to happen next, right? Suspense. And I had hits to pay it off. Next is silence and negative space. If you noticed, when to hold a moment without music or effects, if you notice, I had my music and I had my effects come off right as Tim Cook after he said, life without Apple, I couldn't imagine that, or however he worded it. I had a moment where it held on him and everything music and sound effects cut out before we went into the next part. Why did I do that? Because silence and negative space, when put correctly, it can actually enhance emotion and enhance the story. Now, some examples of emotional editing. How action movies, let's take action films for an example, generally speaking action films, what do? At its core, they always build tension. How do they do it? They do it through quick cutting. Again, take this with a grain of salt, this part here, this examples part, because this isn't always the case. But generally speaking, action movies build tension through quick cutting, right? Dramatic films or documentaries or even YouTube documentaries, most of the time, we use longer shots for deep emotional connection. However, take this with a grain of salt because a lot of times we also use all three of these. We use fast cuts, we use slow cuts, we use it all. And then finally with vlogs and social content, you can use music to help create excitement and nostalgia. Again, I basically isolated each of these things, but they shouldn't in reality be isolated. In reality, these all work together, right? All of these. Okay? So that was part 2, the power of emotion and how to take control of it in the edit with an example of how I did it. Next, let's go into structuring a video for maximum engagement and then a POV of a storytelling, right? Of storytelling, like point of view of storytelling. Okay, so first, the hook, grabbing attention in the first 10 seconds, really or less, okay? The hook is the moment where people truly decide whether they will keep watching or not. For more of this, guys, I have a whole entire video on this that you can see in the video structure lesson in the YouTube module of this program. Okay. But for now, what are the strongest types of hooks? Well, again, we go into detail in this in the YouTube module scripting video. But for now, we have, change the color. We have the question hook, we have the statement hook, the story hook, and the trifecta, which is all of these combined into one hook. Okay. Now, another thing is we have a question or mystery type hook, or we want to evoke a question or mystery. We want to have an emotional reaction, a bold statement or problem, an action sequence. Okay. These are also all ways that we could hook the audience. However, when we fundamentally break it down to these 4, we can see that these 4 actually have carryover. So the question hook, well, the question hook can go into a question or mystery. The question hook can also fall into an emotional reaction because if we ask or pose a question or mystery in a way that hits people's pain points, that's an emotional reaction. Okay. What else? We have the statement hook, and this is where you just hook them with a statement that's like a really powerful statement. And this can cause an emotional reaction. This can also be a bold statement or problem, and it can also be a statement in the form of an action sequence, right? Then we have the story hook. And the story hook is really an action sequence. It's the part of the video where the story is at the highest stakes or at the most conflict. And we just put that in the beginning. We just put that in the beginning of the video as a hook, right? The story hook, it can be all of these: a question or mystery, an emotional reaction, a bold statement or problem, and an action sequence. And then we have the trifecta hook, which is everything put together into one hook. Okay. Again, for examples of this and more on this, go to the YouTube module of the scripting and the video structure lesson in the YouTube module. Now we have the middle. So we want to keep viewers interested, right? It's hard to do sometimes, but we can do it with pattern interrupts. We can do it with mini story arcs, and we can do it with building emotional moments. Okay, so pattern interrupts, what is that? Well, it's changing the pacing, it's changing the music, it's changing the visuals to keep engagement high. It's interrupting any patterns that may be happening with things that should not be, that should interrupt the pattern, right? It's exactly what it sounds like. Then we have mini story arcs, which is keeping each section interesting so viewers don't drop off. And we can do this by understanding everything we just talked about with hooks and story loops and setups and payoffs and all that. That's how we can build mini story arcs. And then building emotional moments, which we could do this by showing stakes or gradually increasing the stakes of the story, which is basically where the conflict is the highest, right? This is really conflict or stakes, okay? Then we have the ending, and this is where we can create a satisfactory payoff. Or in the beginning of the video where we have our hook or curiosity loop, this is where we can have the payoff, okay? So there are 3 ways to end a video. With a strong resolution, the final takeaway or lesson, or the payoff, right? We have a call to action, which is what the viewer should actually do next, but we should add urgency or we should add stakes to this. For example, everything I just told you in this video is completely useless if you don't call to action, okay? If you don't go watch this video next, or if you don't opt into this course or whatever. Then we have an open-ended cliffhanger. And this is basically where we create curiosity for the next video. We could also combine these two together. We can combine an open-ended cliffhanger with a call to action, right? We could say exactly what I just said and then create curiosity. But if you guys want, like, everything you just watched is completely useless. But if you guys want the solution to this problem of wasting the last 10 minutes of your life having watched this in regards to it being useless, I created a video that you can go watch. But in order to know what that video is, you first have to go follow me on Instagram, whatever it is. I'm just coming out with stuff randomly, but you get the idea how we can collaborate those together, okay? Now that leads us to our next point, which is point 4, finding the story's clarity in the edit, okay? Avoiding information overload. This is extremely important. We do not want to overload the people. It's like buying a product. The second they get overwhelmed, they will not buy. The second they get overloaded with information, they will not watch. Plain and simple. Do not information overload them, right? The 1 idea per scene rule, this is really good because this keeps the storytelling clear. And this is exactly what it sounds like, guys. This is not rocket science. It's the 1 idea per scene rule. So for every scene, we really have 1 main point, 1 main conflict, or 1 main idea per that scene. Okay. The next thing we could do is cut out repetition and unnecessary details because this can actually contribute to information overload. If we have too much repetition or too much unnecessary details within points, they will become overloaded with too much information and be confused and click off. So when to cut and when to actually hold, right? Well, typically speaking, in order to keep things easy to understand and to avoid information overload on your end as the editor, we can do fast cuts for energy and action and long cuts for emotion and drama, right? So this is in terms of when to cut and when to hold, right? So in videos, we should know, and we'll build up intuition over time of when to do fast cuts and when to do long cuts. The Apple video I showed you that I edited is a perfect example of how I use fast cuts, knowing that I had to be energetic and action and show action in my editing because I needed them to get the point without clicking off. Then when they got it, I built some tension with a little bit of longer cuts, a little bit more emotion and drama. Then we have cutting for viewer understanding. See, guys, this whole point, everything falls in line. See, what we want to do is we want to match visuals and audio cues. So what do I mean by this? Well, when to let footage speak and when to let narration guide the story. This is incredibly important. A lot of people will put way too much footage, way too much animations, when sometimes, which not way too much people do this because actually not enough people, but sometimes this does happen where you put too much footage or too much animations, but sometimes it's a point where if we just let the person actually talk to the camera without anything, it would have brought the story out so much more. Again, this is about building intuition over time and understanding when to do this, but matching visual and audio cues is important to understand. When basically to put something, when to cut, okay? Next is using reaction shots. This is extremely important. why characters' reaction is often more powerful than the action itself. For example, if I'm explaining something and I'm in a podcast or doing a podcast edit for YouTube, right? And somebody says, oh, right, or I'm saying a point, right? I'm saying DaVinci Resolve is a better editor than Premiere Pro, right? And then I just keep going. Well, imagine how much more powerful that scene would be if I say my point about DaVinci Resolve, and then in between that, I have the guest, I find a reaction, whether it's a real reaction or from a different part of the video, of him saying, oh, okay, like, right, I agree with you. I agree with you. Okay. And then I say my next point, right? Well, using character reactions just gave this a little bit more life and a little bit more ability to have relatability, because now we can relate with them, but also, maybe this is a bad example of a podcast, but also we're also getting another cut, an extra cut here of a reaction shot, which gives us more engagement as well. Again, that might have been a better example, but you get the point of using reaction shots. Why? Sometimes using a character's reactions are often more powerful than the action itself. Or like, for example, if you surprise someone with a Tesla, right? A YouTube video of surprising someone with a Tesla. Typically speaking, what's way more engaging than the actual car Tesla is cutting to the reaction of that person, okay? Getting the Tesla. So in this case, what's engaging is not the car, it's the actual person's reaction, okay? And that's a better example of using reaction shots. Next is foreshadowing and callbacks. Again, we've covered this so many times now. This falls into place with like the payoff, the setups and payoffs, but placing visual hints that connect later in the video. Michelle Carr, YouTuber, does really well in this. Again, for more on this, I cover it in the YouTube section, but finding your story's clarity in the edit, that's how we can do that. Which leads us to point 4, music, sound, and storytelling. Music, guys, I want you to really understand this. Music is an emotional cheat code. That's what music is. And this is something so important to always remember. Because first of all, how to pick the right music. Again, guys, the last video that you watched before this one, the video editing fundamentals, I go in excruciating depth on that lesson on how to do this. But if you've not seen that, or you're more interested in only storytelling, then I'll go over this in slightly different, more unique way. So using music, it matches, one, the tone of the story. That's what we want to do, is we want to use music that matches the tone of the story. We want changing tracks at the key moments to create shift in emotion and have more engagement, meaning we want to constantly change the music. And then how different instruments can impact mood, talking about things like strings, percussions, piano, that kind of thing, right? So what most YouTubers or editors, anyone creating videos really, do wrong is they have a video here and then they'll place 1, maybe 2 songs throughout the whole video, and they basically just use it to distract the viewer. They really do not have any methodical reason or strategy behind that music. This is what we do not want to do. This is wrong. So what to do right? Well, what we want to do right is we want to watch the video. So we want to watch the video all the way through, okay? And then what we want to do is we want to break that video up into sections, okay? Based off of any points or tips or anything they talk about. Break it up into sections. There we go. And then what we want to do is add new music tracks for each of these sections, as we did here. And that will increase retention and engagement. That will increase the story. It will add more emotion. Okay, but let's talk about this more, right? Using sound effects to reinforce storytelling. Let's take a break and talk about sound effects really quick, right? Again, I speak on this in detail in the video editing fundamentals lesson that was before this. However, I will touch on it more right now in light of storytelling. First of all, use background ambience. Because it creates realism and immersion in more depth, really is the word here. It creates more depth in your video, right? Subtle effects, how sound can make cuts feel smoother. So we can actually add sound effects to make cuts feel smoother. Again, in the Apple video, I did this with risers and I did this with hit sound effects. And then audio bridges, right? So transitioning between scenes with consistent audio. A great way to do this is with J cuts and L cuts, which, by the way, if you're not sure what that is, I go into it in depth in the video editing fundamentals, which was before this video. Next is silence can sometimes be the answer, which we already covered a little bit, but the power of silence. Sometimes no music can be more powerful than anything else. It could be the most powerful choice you decide to do. For example, the movie The Quiet Place. I know it's a movie and not YouTube, but this is a great example of a film that literally was the first film to really break the rules of sound. Obviously, this does not apply that much when it comes to YouTube. I fully recognize that since we're not making films, but there is a lot of things that we could take as lessons to carry over into YouTube. For example, how sometimes silence can just be the most powerful thing that we could do, okay? Now, that said, let's go into part 6, which is advanced storytelling tricks, right? Inside the edit. So most people think that you cannot control much of the story or the way the video plays out once the creator actually shoots the video. People think, oh, the way the creator shoots the video, I can't do anything about that as the editor. You're wrong, right? Whether you're the creator or a client sends you the video to edit, it doesn't matter. This is simply untrue. There is actually this whole part 6 or pillar 6. This is a lesson into how much control, to show you how much control we actually have when we edit. So let's talk about first the power of visual metaphors. So what we can do is we could use imagery to reinforce a message. Again, I hate to use the same example, but the Apple video I did, the intro, that is exactly what I did. I used imagery to reinforce a message to help tell a better story. How to cut to symbolic B-roll instead of just showing what's being said, okay? So you might be wondering, okay, but when I come up with an idea like you did for the Apple video, how do I actually find that B-roll? Do I just get it on stock footage sites? No, you do not. You do not. It's called research. That's what you do. You literally go into the YouTube search bar and all I did was spent hours doing research. So I typed in Steve Jobs. I typed in Steve Jobs' first ever keynote, Steve Jobs introducing the iPhone, Tim Cook. I created a document with over 100 videos about Apple. And then I went through all those videos and then I found a way where I could craft a great hook. It's time consuming, guys. It is. But if you want a great story and a great video, well, that's the price you need to pay. And maybe if your life is a Dan Harmon story circle, you'll have finished it having changed. Anyways, the rule of 3. So the storytelling rule of 3 is a narrative technique, meaning one that they typically use within films, that suggests using 3 elements is the best thing to do to create a compelling story. Okay, this can include having 3 characters. This could include having 3 different events taking place, 3 different settings, 3 different themes. See, the rule of 3 creates a sense of balance and completion, making it easier for the audience to follow and remember the story. However, this isn't always applicable in YouTube. Now, I do want to talk about why repeating key visuals or phrases makes them more impactful. Again, this really goes back to the, and I'll just show you the example. This rule can be broken, as I just said, this rule of 3, and it could be just a rule of 2, right? And an example of that is a video that Michael Carr came out with. It's a boxing example. And basically, what happened in that video was this is our video. In the beginning and in the end, in the beginning, we have her boxing coach. And her boxing coach told her, when you get punched in the face, whatever you do, do not wipe the blood on your gloves and check it. Don't check that you're bleeding or not, right? Do not do this. What happens in the final fight, the main payoff of the whole video, the whole main climax, what does she do? In the actual fight, she gets a nosebleed and she wipes it. And what do? She wipes it. What do? We have right here, that creates a callback, okay? From the beginning of the story. And the editors even put it in there. So, this was an example of using a rule of 2, right? A narrative technique where to create a compelling story or give the story a full life, or like we went on a full journey, or a setup and payoff, what they did was they repeated key visuals or phrases to make the story more impactful. Next thing we could do is use speed and motion to reinforce storytelling. And guys, I will be the first person to tell you, when it comes to YouTube, this is 9 out of 10 times not the way to go. However, in some cases, in very, very limited, very, very occasional and rare cases, you can use slow motion to increase drama, tension, or emotion, and you could use fast motion for urgency, action, and excitement. This one's used a lot more, like in vlogs and stuff, than slow motion. Anytime you use slow-mo footage, it's just kind of weird on YouTube. It very case-by-case basis, okay? But this is, again, more in the film, but it can be 100% used strategically in YouTube. But as I said, be careful when doing this, okay? Because you do not want to try to create more attention and a better story by using these two things and then on accident making it worse. Now, let's talk about one of my favorite things to do, which is parallel editing and intercutting. So this is basically where we tell two stories at once for more engagement. Movies use this technique all the time. I'm going to show you how we can do this in YouTube though, okay? So I'm going to give you guys some context. So here's a video that I worked on for Upton, my client, and it's America Has a China Problem, right? Now, let's say for context, it's a sit-down video the creator sent me to work on, and it's a basic video with minimal storytelling. Very minimal. It's just him sitting down talking to the camera. What I did is I watched the video all the way through. So I watched with my eyeballs, I watched this video all the way through, okay? From start to finish. And then what I did is I found a few parts where I could actually break the edit up into points or into sections. Okay, and these were the points and sections I broke it up into. So I broke it up into one, we had the hook, okay? We had where he starts to talk about America, he starts to talk about China, he starts to talk about Trump, the Chinese president, country conflict, and then it was the end, the call to action, right? There was no payoff though. And then, okay, so if these are the main points in this specific example, but in any of your videos, if these are the main points or whatever your points are, I was able to get with only footage, these were points that I was able to come up with by only watching the footage all the way through with high intent and high attention span and looking for specifically things that I could categorize these sections into, okay? With only the footage I was provided. So with that, how could I do parallel editing to add in a second storyline without having any more footage? So once I watched through this and I created my own points, how can I actually create a second storyline if I don't have footage to create a second storyline? If it wasn't scripted, I'm going to show you how. What you do is you create your own character. Okay? That's what you do. How do you do this? Well, I'm going to show you what I did in this video. My new character was TikTok. Why? Well, because I knew a few things. I knew that it was owned by a Chinese parent company. I knew that it's super popular, and I knew that there's a lot of controversy behind it. So this is what it looks like. This is what my story looked like. Let me just get rid of this so you could see this like this. This is what I did instead. So what I did was I took TikTok, and that was going to be my second character that I was going to be able to parallel edit with. Right here, okay? So I had the main video and the footage that he gave me, and then I created my own character, TikTok. And then I thought, you know what? How can I take TikTok as the main character, and how can I have, make it engaging throughout? So then I came up with these. Well, I could talk about the TikTok ban. I could talk about Trump reinstating it. I can talk about the leader who was in office when banning TikTok, and I could talk about China's reaction. This could be my whole entire second story. But how do I intertwine it to this? Well, the hook is boring because it's just him talking to camera, the creator. So what I can do is I could start the hook the way I did with the Apple video, introducing our first character, our second character, TikTok. Then I can go into the setup, his setup that the creator gave me. Then when I'm talking about America, in between America and China, I can talk about the TikTok ban, okay? Then I have China. Okay, and then I can introduce my second story again, or I could reintroduce my second story where we talk about Trump, and then we could talk about Trump reinstating the ban. Okay, the leader who was in office when banning, we could intertwine that with the Chinese president one and how much they dislike each other, and we could also include this in between China and Trump. And we could also include it in the part where we talk about banning. Then we have China's reaction, and this could be right before country conflict, right? And then we could have payoff, where we actually talk about the final result of what happened with TikTok. That is how we could, out of nothing, come up with a second story. How do we find extra material like this? I already said it. One word, research, guys. Research, research, research. And that is how you do that. Let's move on. Cool. Final point, storytelling in different types of videos. So vlogs, just a few rules of thumb to keep in mind. Keep things fast and engaging while maintaining a personal narrative. This is exceptionally important. Personal narrative, okay? Cutting for relatability and authenticity. Authenticity here is the most important. The reason vlogs are popular again is because of authenticity. If you're not authentic, your vlog will not do well. unless it's like crazy, right? How to do this. I know people are going to hate me for this, but even if you do a vlog, you can still be authentic and have an outline. So have an outline for the things that you want to cover in the vlog, not a script. I'm not saying have a script. What we want to do is play out. We want the video to play out authentically. So we can't do that with a script. What we're going to do is have an outline, then follow that outline in a raw and authentic way. Why do we do this? Because a lot of times people go off on tangents and then vlogs get boring and people click off. But if we have an outline to follow, we won't do that. Like, let's say even if it's like an agenda of things for us to do in our day of vlogging, right? A lot of times we have setups and payoffs in our daily lives and we don't even know it. We just need to find them while editing. And then we can now have full-on storytelling in our vlogs. Next is YouTube videos. Building a narrative structure to keep people watching, which we talked about, and using the loop technique. This one's my favorite one for educational type or just basic YouTube videos. How top creators make sure people don't drop off. They use this one constantly, and it's setting up a curiosity loop, and then at the end of the video, having a payoff, okay? Or having it constantly throughout. YouTube documentaries, like the stuff I do. Building character arcs, or whether that's a company or a person, a place, a thing, whatever. Doing parallel editing, as I just showed you, and then creating an emotional buildups and climaxes at the right moments, like I did with the Apple intro. Then we have educational videos, which a lot of you fall into, right? Making boring content engaging through storytelling techniques. One of the best ways we could do this with educational content is, again, curiosity loops, setups, and then payoffs, okay? Editing for persuasion and impact. We could do this with everything we talked about thus far. And then understanding psychology. This, using people's pain points to keep them engaged. The psychology of pain or of emotion, right? If I'm an editor who wants to make more money, but I can't figure it out for the life of me, that's my pain point. So what am I going to do? I'm going to make my educational videos mainly around that pain point, to using psychology and emotion and pain points to give my videos more strong storytelling technique or more persuasion, more impact, right? That's what we're going to do. And that, my friends, that is storytelling as an editor, the masterclass from Creator Launch Accelerator. This was the mastery of storytelling for YouTube. So you can go on and practice and master all these story editing techniques, and you should. But what's the point if you don't have any clients to edit for and actually implement these strategies that you learn? I see so many editors grinding for hours and hours on their craft, but they never actually land paying gigs. And trust me, I've been there with literally negative dollars to my name. But what changed everything for me, well, it was that I learned how to turn my skills into a business. And that's exactly why I created Creator Launch Accelerator. It's something that I've been working on for months, over 8 months now. And it's where I personally coach editors on how to level up their actual craft and edit like the top 1% and land real clients that actually pay well. And listen, I hate to talk about numbers because it makes me feel tacky and it kind of cringy to me. And I don't want to come off like a guru, but I understand that we lived in a trust recession and people need to see proof. So just to show you the proof behind this, so you know that I'm not just some guru claiming something, this is what I did last month as a video editor. And no, of course, to be transparent, this is not all profit, but a good chunk of it was, and it was still a very, very good month. So if you want to learn how to, one, become a bit better video editor, which is the most important thing of all, and then second, if you want to learn how to make it a business, turn it into a career, you want to learn these strategies and tips that I use to grow client YouTube channels that you can do for your own YouTube channel, but also clients that you edit with, right? To help build yourself, your value to them. And if you're serious about making video editing, if you're serious about making this your career and not just a hobby, then you can click the link in the description below to check out, not even join, just check out the program and see if it's something that would be a good fit for you. Anyways, guys, as always, I hope that this was filled with value, and well, I'm rooting for you guys.